Well, hello everybody. Uh, so it's about 7 o'clock, or 1 minute before, um, and we continue our talk about uh, the Sunday of Forgiveness that is coming up. But before we start, there are 3 hymns. The 2 of them from the Sunday service, and the third one is from the canon that I wanted to share with you today. And let's see if I will be able to find it right here. So again, it's from the same CD from St. Seraphim Church in Santa Rosa, California, and that we've been listening before. So the first one you will be able to recognize, of course, most of you, I'm sure. It is "Turn Not Thy Countenance." This is the Prokeimenon that actually begins the Great Lent. So let's listen to this one. Well, here we are. It's supposed to tune us into this very special time, very special season. So last week, with the Sunday, when the church calls to mind, brings us in the presence of the future, the dread judgment, the second coming of Christ. This Sunday, we are brought back to the past. It's really important for us that last Sunday we were given direction to where we are going in our life. Now, this Sunday, we go back to the very beginning. So, just as an opening, I had this thought that, well, we know, especially from biology, that a human being begins on a very primitive level with a few cells that divide and grow, and actually somehow, with incredible speed, pass through these stages of life. And then the main event in that growth is actually the birth. There are some psychologists who believe that the trauma of birth is really shaping not only the mindset but the very context of human life. And when we think of what happens during birth, we can see that one thing is very, very clear. There is a kind of separation, or at least in some way, and maybe biological way, the separation of the infant from his or her mother. And that separation and the emphasis on the self-sufficient individual survival and existence is a very important principle. So let's see how that reflect on, or rather how the biblical account of creation somehow reflects on our personal history, as it were. How everything that happened since the foundation of the world, in fact, is experienced by every single one of us in our own life. So last week we talked about a little bit about creation, and here I just want to kind of bring us back to where we stopped last week. So of course, the theme of next Sunday is the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise, is the fall, and the understanding of the fast that clearly is built upon or derived from that understanding of the fall. So let's move on and look at some icons that present to us this theme. There are a few of them that I haven't been able to show last time. So, for example, this one is in the dome. It's a beautiful mosaic depicting angels. So when in Genesis 1 we read, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, especially in the mind of the church, that statement means the invisible and visible. So the spiritual realm of the angels, of powers, authorities, principalities, and so on, archangels, and the rest of creation, visible universe. So here you see that those wonderful cherubim and seraphim. In fact, we found out that the seraphim, of course, the fiery one, but in the iconography, the cherubim are depicted exactly in the same way, except that on their wings, sometimes you can see a multitude of eyes. So, sort of making this division between the cherubim and seraphim. Now we actually last week I think I misidentified this first image that you see on the left. It is an image of the first act of creation, which is "let there be light," and you can see to the right of the mandorla containing our Lord, there's rays or like this radiation of light. And of course the image of the dove again is a personification of the spirit that moved above the waters. So now and then the next one is the division of the firmament of the waters from the waters. So here we go. The next one. We've talked a little bit about that last time. How the world blossomed from the creative action of Christ. How everything literally blossomed and came forth from the Word of God, the entire creation in its wholeness. So here, when the Lord did not really create specifically each part individually, but rather created this entire fullness of the world, from within which the inanimate objects, matter, energy, and also life sprung forth. Now, here we see the precisely that in the left icon, the creation of all the animal, all the life forms that sprung from the very nature, the very essence of the world, until the creation of man, which was a very unique and specific act of God, separate from everything else. When God took the earth, or rather the very kind of a quintessence of that created world, and from that earth, or from that clay, he made a human person. Now, it's interesting that here, in this account, in the first chapter of the book of Genesis, it is only Adam that is created. And the text does not really elaborate anymore. So the human nature represented in this very general form, a human person is created. So, and on the seventh day, our Lord had rested. And this rest, of course, is very active. It is not like he said, okay, well, now I've done my job, so now you can do and be by yourself. That's exactly the opposite of what he had done. But that rest is yet another fundamental gift of God to his creation. In that rest, he allowed the freedom of the world, or most specifically the freedom of the human person to act and to respond to the love and loving creation of God himself. Now, we put here, last time somebody asked about the differences or the meaning of this gesture of the blessing hand, and you can see that the upper image on your left, in your upper left corner, is the image of the gesture that means very, very clearly the very kind of a condensed form of Christian faith, in which we believe in the triune God, and we believe in two natures of Christ, both human and divine. Now, the lower one is it's a later, of course, image, and it's a kind of a little bit misleading, because it looks not so much as the expression of this or statement of faith, but rather it looks like letters of Greek alphabet standing for Jesus Christos, or Jesus Christ. And of course that the meaning is therefore diminished. So it is more appropriate, at least in my opinion, that it is the proper form of this blessing is exactly the same way as we bless ourselves. Of course, we fold our fingers differently now, but still the meaning is the same: three persons of the Trinity and two natures in Christ. So, all right, so now we come to the main subject of tonight's talk, and that is the fall. Now, it is really interesting that, let's talk for a second, the notion of came out clear in the first book of in the first chapter of Genesis, in which God created man as a kind of, without elaboration, without dividing humankind along gender. So, and maybe the reason for that, or maybe one of the reasons for that, is that the notion here is that human nature is wholesome, is an image of a human nature is that of unity. And then that unity became kind of, again, blossomed or elaborated by God in division of genders, division of sexes. So, and here God created Eve, or a woman, from this very kind of a single nature, so that when Adam said, well, now she is truly a bone of my bone, a flesh of my flesh. So it's not so much that she is subservient to a man, or a man came out first. No, probably that was not what it meant, but rather that both male and female reveal, personify, as the fathers would say, hypostasize the fullness of the human nature. So, and that fullness of the human nature is not rooted in each of them individually, but rather in this context of communion with each other. So, so that in creating a human person or human nature, God created us after his own image and likeness, after the mode of Trinitarian life. So that this actually, a wonderful mosaic on your right, actually reveals that communion, that three, God himself, and then Adam and Eve being totally in communion with each other, being united as persons. So it's interesting that so if we go back to the left image and see the focus for a moment on that God planted the tree of knowledge of good and evil in paradise that he planted and cultivated for humans. And most people think that he tricked us. He said, well, forbidden fruit. And is it not true that the forbidden fruit is the one that we desire the most? And so, in a sense, he laid that tree as a stumbling block for humankind. Personally, I think that that's very, very wrong. And it's, in my opinion, it has no connection with Christian, especially Orthodox, understanding of that. Now, no, the tree was a gift, yet another gift. God does not act toward us in any other way, but sharing His love and giving us gifts. So this was a gift of reciprocal love, because He created us perfectly and absolutely free, so that we will be equal within the context of that love, within the context of that communion. And the only way Adam and Eve could show or experience that reciprocal love is by offering another gift. And the gift is clearly not just obedience to God. Of course, there is also that aspect, but it is trust. It is trust, respect. It is the limitation of themselves for the sake of the other, self-emptying for the sake of the other as an expression of love. It's very, very crucial to understand that symbol, that image, in that way, it seems to me. Now, there are some people who say that, well, I even heard an Orthodox theologian who said, well, Adam and Eve were like kids. They didn't know any better. And therefore, for them, these choices appear to be not quite conscious. So they cannot really be judged or valued, or as we do not really judge or value the choices made by little kids, because they don't know any better. I strongly disagree with that. It seems to me that there's a fundamental theology, and especially in icons, that will contradict that. No, the whole point is that they knew. They knew. They made the choice perfectly free. Perfectly free. They had to. Otherwise, that choice wouldn't have made that effect. If they were not free, then the impact of their choice, just like the impact of the choices that kids make, often are not earth-shattering. So let's move on. So here we have, from the third chapter of the book of Genesis, the events of the Great Fall. Now, it's really amazing how important these themes are to us, especially during this time. So, I would like to take a moment, kind of go into a little tangent here. The human nature, as created by God, was perfect, was good, not only just good, but very good. Kalos. It was perfect in every possible way. No blemishes, no shortcomings, nothing was there undeveloped. But that human nature was perfect and complete. And it resulted, of course, in this perfect and complete freedom that Adam and Eve had. Now, so, what was the attraction of the forbidden fruit? One of the ways we can understand that, it seems to me, is to look at this tragedy as a choice between nature and person. So the person is always dependent and in fact experienced only in relationship with the other. that in fact what makes us a person. Every one of us is a person inasmuch and only to the extent that we relate to other persons. But that is a kind of a very especially for us, it's a very difficult perspective, very difficult idea to accept. So what happens is that we, in our life especially, revert to the notion of nature. Oh, well, this person did this and that, well, because, it's genetics. It's something that nature, it's something predetermined. It is one's nature to do this and that. So, and by saying that, of course, we say, well, nature is a self-sufficient, independent, and totally self-enclosed entity. Now, it only happened, in fact, and that's true, it happened as a result of the fall. So the attraction was, I don't need God to make myself a God. I don't need to look at my own existence in a context of relationship with this other person. I can be myself by myself. I can take care of myself. I can enjoy my own nature for my own sake. And so the choice was to revert from this paradox of being God-like to, in fact, to be animal-like, to be like everything else that God created that was a nature, was simply and was bound by the nature. Well, it's the nature of the tree to bear fruits in whatever kind. It is the nature of the earth to yield the grasses and the animals and the fishes. And that's it. So, and the choice of eating that fruit was fundamentally the choice that somehow, in a very, very horrible way, denounced or destroyed the very personal existence of human nature. So it's really loaded. We can talk a lot about it, and hopefully during Great Lent we will be coming back again and again to this very, very tragedy of the fall. So so here we have Adam and Eve taking that forbidden fruit, which of course was not really forbidden in a sense that, well, God will punish you if you disobey Him. In fact, it seems to me that it's that logic is rather sick. Just think about it. After the fall, what did Adam and Eve do? Well, they discovered that they were naked and they were afraid. What were they afraid of? Could they be afraid of God? Well, could they be afraid of punishment for disobeying Him or something like that? Well, it seems to me that they had absolutely no reason for it. They had no notion of God acting in the punishing way. Well, we, on the other hand, of course, have such a notion, and in buckets. But for Adam and Eve, they have never perceived God wrathful, vengeful, judgmental, and even thinking about it. And I read that in this wonderful book by Jan Arras. Even what about God's action? How could they, even among us humans? I mean, okay, we made a mistake. We were selfish. We did something terrible, and yet we can see that we're being forgiven. A loving mother would forgive a child if the child misbehaves. A father would probably explain, "Hey, don't do that anymore because of this and that." We can understand that, and if it's not true that our Lord Himself said, you forgive 70 times 7. Why didn't He forgive them? So, in fact, Adam and Eve had absolutely no reason to be afraid. So what happened? What happened? And here, most of you know that I had this theologumena that I was very happy to find some backing in the iconography, in the ancient iconography, that in fact in paradise Adam and Eve were kind of clothed, or they behaved as though they were. And the notion was that, of course, they were clothed in this glory of God. This glory that they had, the glory of them as being image of God, being loved by God. But the book of Genesis clearly states, after the fall, when they discovered that they were naked, but they were naked before, their eyes did not see their nakedness. And again, many people think that this is a kind of, people have a different idea of the shame of nakedness, and therefore kind of primitive people don't have much of that. So therefore they were kind of primitive animals, don't have any shame at all, and they are not trying to cover themselves in any way. So, but maybe there is a different meaning here. Again, I borrow from Jan Arras here. Let's look at this. It seems to me that what they had experienced is a loss of intimacy. A person who is very, very close to the other, like husband and wife, or like a little child and a parent. They have no shame toward each other. Because they do not need to protect their personhood from objectivation, from abuse. They do not need to. So, in fact, this notion that they were naked and it didn't bother them in paradise because they were truly a husband and wife. They were truly united in that perfect personal communion that is alien to shame. There is no shame there at all. It should not be. So it happened when they fell. And here, if you still keep that icon that you see on the right in mind, and then we switch over to the next one. I hope it's the next one. Yes. So this is a superb image, and absolutely incredible. The image of Adam and Eve from this sarcophagus of Junius Bassus, which is the mid-4th century. And there are many, many scenes there. This is just one fragment. And look at Adam and Eve. They're turned away from each other. They are strangers. Instead of being in total loving communion with each other, now they look at each other as strangers, as alien. And they protect their personhood. They protect this notion of who they were as persons against this objectivization in which each of them is nothing but, if you want, a sexual symbol, an object to be used in some way. So it's really astonishing how true that is about our condition. Now, and it's true in our personal life. I remember I was ashamed when I probably was about 4 years old, so kind of took me maybe longer than others, but I remember clearly the moment when I was ashamed of my own nakedness. And the kids go through that, around that time, maybe 3, 4 or something. And I even have a dream that I remembered based on that experience, and I think that my grandmother was giving me a bath or something like that, but it was during the summer, and so there was a bathtub that she filled with warm water, and it was outside. And I was in that bathtub and the people were going by. They were, I don't know who they were. They were strangers going by and looking at me. And I was pierced with that sense of shame. I didn't understand where it was based and what happened, but I remember that sense of shame and this mounting desire to hide, to cover myself. So what happened with Adam and Eve when their glory was gone, when they became strangers to each other? They wanted to mask that alienation by taking the glory of other creatures and covering themselves, pretending that they are something else. And they took these fig leaves and sawed aprons for themselves, a covering for themselves. Now, it's really interesting. I tried to make a study of a kind of a philosophical background of human clothing, and discovered that all the clothing, especially ancient ones, but even today, the style of fashion of clothing based on either flora or fauna, based on an appearance of other creatures. They can be insects or birds or animals or plants. But it's still, there's a clear connection that the fall made us less than human. The fall made us into animals because we became just depersonalized representative of species, individual representative of our species. And in order to cover the lack in our person, we try to appear like someone else or something else. That seems to be a very, very kind of interesting thought to think about. So let's move on. Again, especially in American Christianity, I found that most people think of and understand the fall as a kind of, if not ethical event, then it is an event that happened only to human beings. And they kind of have a hard time understanding or looking into the cosmic effect of the fall. And here we have this fantastic image of this galaxy or nebula that exploded. It's a kind of a cosmic catastrophe that spans from right to left of that image is 50 light years. It's just, these astronomical numbers sometimes make me shiver. They're just so incomprehensible, these sizes. But at any rate, what happened, of course, at the fall, and here I go back to this, my favorite theologumena, is that the fall is the Big Bang. And then all creation, we in fact very soon will be singing this hymns in church, that all creation suffered with Christ, and all creation suffered with Adam. St. Paul says that the whole creation yearns, moans and yearns for the salvation that comes from Christ, from a man, from Christ who fulfilled Adam's job to bring creation into the fold of eternity, into the fold of communion with God. So whole creation suffered. So when we look at it from a scientific kind of a perspective and see that all these billions of years and all these vast spaces and all these incomprehensible powers of creation, in fact, is a result of that cosmic catastrophe that was the fall. So here we are. uh, hopefully recognizing the importance of understanding of what the fall is, how it not only pertains to our personal life, to who we are and where we are and what happens to us, but also what happens with the entire universe. So it's a sobering thought, which of course kind of brings me to the next step, which is if that's true, then we have a responsibility. Responsibility that because responsibility is actually a very important point, a very important thing to think about. Now, we normally shirk the responsibility. We say, oh, it's not my fault. Well, look at Adam and Eve. That's what they said. Adam said, oh, it wasn't my fault. It's that wife that you gave me. And the woman said, well, it's not my fault. The devil seduced me. That snake that was here when I came. So basically it was somehow it was here with your approval. So kind of shirking one's responsibility for one's actions. And boy, we do that on and on and on for these uncounted millennia. So now, if we say, maybe following this very famous saying by Elder Zosimus, a character from Brothers Karamazov's by Dostoevsky, who said, well, we are responsible for everything. We have to take responsibility for actions of other people. We have to take responsibility for anything that happens and everything. Sometimes we say, wow, that's too much. What is he talking about? I have a hard time, of course, taking responsibility even for my own actions, let alone these kind of a grand view. Now, and the reason why we don't want to take responsibility, because again we fall into the same trap. We think that being responsible will bring what? Will bring wrath, will bring punishment, will bring destruction, oblivion, will bring all kinds of horror. Now, in fact, quite the opposite is true. If we take responsibility, we first and foremost can do something about it. If we don't take responsibility and we blame everybody else, we are totally paralyzed. There's nothing that we can do. So we lose, or rather abandon, our own freedom. Now, but if we take that responsibility, we say, well, then I can do something about it. I'm engaged, I'm involved, and therefore maybe in some very, very tiny and small way, my actions will then acquire meaning and maybe very, very small, but impact on what happens. So we have to take responsibility, and that's, of course, the fundamental aspect of that forgiveness, and that we are going to ask for from each other at the very beginning of Lent, this Sunday. So, all right. Now, so our next slide shows the angel leading Adam and Eve out of paradise. And here maybe just for a couple of minutes we can talk about, well, their appearance had changed. So they are clothed right now, not in the fig leaves, but in a kind of clothing. And of course we read in the book of Genesis that God gave them skins of leather, or not skins, clothing made of skins, clothing of leather. So, and there's a tremendous amount of speculation I've heard about that. What does that mean? The Gnostics, of course, would say that it means that they were disincarnate, but here they were kind of finally acquire they were locked into the material reality. Now, the Christians can't accept that. So, now, well, what does that mean? It seems to me that one of the things we can say about that is that it is yet again a gift. Yet again a gift that leads to salvation. It is a kind, in some way, it is an acceptance of God, of our choices. Adam and Eve made a horrible choice, but God could not just simply disregard it, as we often disregard. Again, the notion of Adam and Eve are little kids, so the parents say, okay, well, you've done something bad, but I don't take it against you. In fact, God cannot do that, because it is precisely His image that is our personal freedom. And if He will divest us from that, we won't be human. So He, in fact, accepts our choices, even though these choices are destructive. Even though these choices mean and express alienation from God Himself. So the fact that He said, okay, well, here you are, and I will give you that existence. I will not leave you in that fall, in that terrible destruction and decomposition of the universe that you have caused, but I will provide for your salvation. So here you are. You are clothed. You are protected. You have to work through the discovery and return to the meaning and the actual state of being as a person in that broken reality of the universe. And you see again, it's the cherubim or cherub standing, guarding with a sword, guarding the gates of paradise. Again, you can see the little eyes on his wings. So, and then on the right you see Adam laboring with a sweat on his brow. That's survival. That's something that they chose. That their survival was not dependent on the communion with God, not being persons, but the survival of the species, survival of nature. And that's, of course, so that the fruits that were there as a free gift of love right now had to be torn out of this universe and literally killed and digested and transformed into very biological substance of our beings. This mosaic is really very beautiful. Look at Eve and the expression of her figure. How much she resembles that kind of a ultimate profound sorrow that is very much a part and parcel of our existence. So this is the another image of the expulsion of Adam and Eve, creation, and this whole grand expose of the fall. And here, of course, Adam and Eve are dressed in the royal clothing, kind of a. Obviously, these symbols are taken from Roman or Byzantine fashions. So they are king and queen of this creation, and how they abandoned or betrayed their destiny, and they stripped themselves off that glory, and they leave naked, they leave empty. So it's a very, very profound image. So we have about 10-15 minutes. And there's so much material, of course. Normally, I really wanted to go kind of about a week or two before the actual event within the liturgical season. But here we are. We will go a little bit into the beginning of Great Lent and what will be happening next week. So here is a beautiful icon of Saint Andrew of Crete. But from the first notion of Lent, one discovers that it is perfectly Christocentric. It is the notion that the Great Lent is there for us to gain something, to kind of work on being better Christians, kind of being better believers and stuff like that. In fact, is kind of wrong, because all of those things are just side effect, byproducts. But the actual focus is clearly on Christ himself and on discovery of who he is, where he is, how he acts, and what is this salvation that he brings. So here you see the icon of the Savior from the St. Seraphim Church in Montgeron in France by Father Gregory Krug. And if we look at his face, we immediately discover the very source of that beautiful and unique atmosphere of Great Lent. It is that atmosphere of love, compassion, mercy that is explicitly revealed to us by Christ. It is him not being a judge. It is him not being a wrathful, vengeful God who's bound by the laws of fairness or whatnot. But his love has no limit. His compassion is immeasurable. And all that can be seen in his face, in this icon. So let's remember that whatever we do, it is always and ultimately bound in our encounter with Christ himself. So that there will be no doubt in us, or no confusion in us regarding the practices of fasting, everything that we do for the fast. It is all around and focused on and centered on the presence of Christ and our own encounter with him. So, Great Lent begins with the service of Vespers of Forgiveness. Vespers is a border service, and it signifies the end of one day and the beginning of the other. So we anticipate this moment during Vespers of Forgiveness this coming Sunday, the time of the Prokeimenon that we've heard at the beginning of tonight's talk. That is the beginning of Lent. Now, of course, at the end of Vespers in the Orthodox Church, we go through this so-called rite of forgiveness, in which everyone comes and greets each other and asks forgiveness for all the sins they might have committed. So here you have an image of that forgiveness, the images of two apostles, Peter and Paul. In fact, when you read the New Testament, you will discover that these two men fought and disagreed with each other quite a lot. And Paul accused Peter of being kind of wishy-washy and cowardice, and was true. And they argued. They did not see eye to eye all the times. But these arguments always and ultimately resulted in that mutual forgiveness. So here you have this wonderful relief fragment, sculpture from the early 4th century of Peter and Paul. This is what we're going to be doing with each other. We will be asking forgiveness. Now, of course, we would say, well, you have to forgive, just because if you don't forgive, that'll eat you. And you have to forgive, just sort of do it to yourself. If you forgive people, you will feel lighter, you will feel better, better about yourself. There will be less traps and kind of hang-ups in your life and stuff like that. It's maybe true. But this forgiveness that we're talking about is the forgiveness that is based on one single, around the center. And that center is Christ himself. That center is his resurrection. So during the rite of forgiveness in the Orthodox Church, the choir quietly sings the Stichirs of Pascha, or canon of Pascha. But Stichir of Pascha, and here it is: this is the day of resurrection. Let us be illumined by the feast. Let us embrace each other. Let us call brothers even those that hate us, and forgive all by the resurrection. So it is by the resurrection, by means of resurrection, for the sake of resurrection, for the sake of this glorious second coming of Christ, for the sake of eternal life, which we will spend together. If we ever get there, we will spend it together. So for that sake, for Christ's sake, for the sake of his resurrection, we need to forgive each other. So it becomes not just a little psychological exercise, but rather it is very, very profound. Again, it is a cosmic action. Fathers especially were very keen on saying that the world is divided. The world is in war, in a constant state of war, when not only each individual has to tear its own existence from the throat of someone else. And it's so true about human history for sure. But if you look around, you see that this kind of the law of tooth and claw is definitely the primary law of the universe. And here, what do? We say, nope. There is another law that supersedes. There is a law of peace. There is a law of forgiveness. And that's the first action of that change, of that transformation that we are called to do for God's sake, for Christ's sake. So we are, in fact, what is the Christian life if not to undo the fall? That's kind of a high calling. It's something that we need to sort of wake up to. It's a high calling to undo all the wrongs in the world, to undo all the curses, all the evil, all the spells that are so present in the world. So that's what we need to do. And we begin that with saying, no more animosity, no more division, no more separation, no more fighting, no more jealousy. But so that because of Christ, because of his presence in our midst, we will make peace. We will ask forgiveness from each other. So it's something to meditate on, especially so tonight's Friday, so in less than 2 days we will have to face each other in that way, and I hope we will remember that this is what we're doing. All right. And here is the last image, I think, that I will show. And it is from the same, no, that's from the skeet. I think there is a bit of a mistake here. It's from the skeet of the Holy Spirit, but written by Father Gregory Krug, a masterpiece of a fresco of the descent into Hades, of the resurrection. This is why we need to forgive each other. This is the focus. This is the goal. This is where we're going. This is what we have to prepare ourselves for. And again, looking at this magnificent image, I would like to bring your attention to something that I always do, in fact. You probably heard me say that before. But looking at this image, you look at Christ and his towering figure and the face of utter concentration when he truly makes all things new. He quickens, gives life to everything that has been dead and died in the fall. So we can even understand that. I mean, with all the limitations that we have, we still can feel it somehow. But the faces of Adam and Eve, especially Adam here, it is so unique. Adam looks at Christ. And yes, at that moment the entire universe is being made alive. All this I don't know, billions of light years, in fact, are reconnected. Everything in it reconnected, made alive. And yet, it seems that he's oblivious to that. He looks only at the face of his beloved, at the face of his Lord. So, in fact, again, thinking of this image as the very goal toward which we are hurtling toward, and I like that term, hurtling, because it always seems that the Lent is so fast. It's like this locomotive train or this bullet train like they have in Japan, 400 kilometers an hour or something, but super fast. We are hurtling toward this event. And in order to receive it, in order to allow Christ to pick us out from our own personal fall or death, with that incredible gentleness and care with which he's lifting. Look how he holds Adam's hand. So we need to think of that expression. We need to acquire some of that. We need to think of what it means. So I guess that's, if anything, to me, if we can fix that image in our mind, going into this weekend and into the beginning of Lent, then the Lent will be meaningful. The Lent will be a joyful time, the time of spiritual spring, the time of glory. So let's do that. Let's do that. I didn't have any questions so far. We are running out of time. So hopefully, God willing, we will resume our talk next Friday. There will be the only one evening without services in church. So we will have the canon on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. We will have the liturgy of pre-sanctified gifts on Wednesday, And let's get together on Friday and to talk a little more. Unfortunately, we will kind of go back and review this coming week in Canon of St. Andrew. There are so many treasures in it. Fortunately for us, we will be given a chance to come back to the Canon on Thursday of the 5th week of Great Lent, so it will be okay. But, the spring is upon us. Even though it's really, really cold outside, but the spiritual spring is upon us, and this is definitely far more important for us and for our life. So thank you all. So we didn't have as many people as last time. Maybe we've lost some because we changed the time, changed the day. But hopefully more people will be able to join us. It will be really fun, and more questions will be coming. Again, thank you, and God bless you. And hopefully I'll see all of you in church. All the services will be broadcast. So if you can't make it, click on our radio, and you'll be able to somehow participate in the services in the church. Thank you.